Hi there, welcome to my channel. If we haven't met, my name is Julie, and today I'm celebrating a pretty big milestone that I've reached right here on YouTube. I have reached 10,000 subscribers, and it's because of people like you. So I want to take a moment and say thank you. Thank you for being with me on my creative journey and allowing me to grow on this platform. Now, all week long, I have a few friends that are going to help me celebrate. The Creative Design Team girls are going to kick it off for the first week, and they've decided that we should have an additional challenge. And whoopsie, let's turn this over. We are going to scrapbook the same photo. So we're going to have a main photo, and then we're going to add in our supporting photos, and that's going to live on one of my previous scrapbook layout that I've done right here on this channel. I couldn't help myself. I wanted to extend this celebration, so I decided to invite a few of my close YouTuber friends to help me celebrate. They will scrap lift one of my projects. They won't have the picture that we have, but I can't wait to see what they decide to scrap lift and how they add their personal touches and flair. So I want to say again, thank you from the bottom of my heart. I really do appreciate your support, and let's turn this camera around and see what I have in store for you today. Let's go back to 2020. This is the layout I will be recreating for you today, and I wanted to talk about some of the composition and techniques that I use back in 2020. We've got 3 photos here, a main photo, supporting photos. I do feel that these are floating a little bit, but I guess the idea was that they were running across a stripe pattern, so that was working. I have clusters, but they're a little bit spread out. Since then, I've learned to kind of bring them more together, make them maybe a little bit more substantial, and create a better flow visually so that when you're looking across the page, you don't have a lot of distractions. When you add your photos and you have these competing elements on your page, sometimes it distracts from the photo. So this one here is one of my famous naked layouts. It lives down in the bin underneath my desk, and obviously I don't have photos yet. So these little banners that are meant to represent a countdown are not completely adhered down because the idea is that I'm going to slide a photo underneath. Now you can see that I was using my Cricut to create titles and to add to my clusters. Now these are most likely die cuts, and I was probably trying to bulk them up, but I feel that they're a little bit spread out. Let me know what you think. So this is what I am going to recreate for you today. So let's take a look at the products that I'm going to bring in to give this layout a brand new look. Let's take a look at the new paper collections I'll be using to recreate this layout. These are companion collections if you want. They are brand new from Stampin Up. And this one here in particular I think is really pretty. It's got these really bold patterns. They're kind of neutral, so I'm going to use that as a neutral. It is called Woven Textures, and then the companion, if you want, is a black and white, and you would think black and white is super easy to use. It can be, but it also needs a little bit of respect because it can also be very difficult. So I'm just fanning through here. You can see that they have called this one here Botanical Textures for all of the botanical prints on one side, and then you have a more grungy look on the other side. Now, the title alone was so fitting for this photo. This was taken at a botanical garden, so I thought, how fitting to use these 2 collections. So here are the foundation pages for this layout, and I've gone ahead and I've pretty much recreated exactly the same placement for the pattern paper, but let's talk about some of the differences that you might notice right away. Of course, the photos are in a different orientation, and you know what? I print from home now, so I get to play with different software like Canva, and here I added 2x2 photos. It's all on one sheet. This was all printed as one, but they're cute little supporting photos for this main focal one. And here I have 2 additional photos. They probably should go this way. This represents early morning and this represents the end of our day, but I think that they look better this way. Now, this photo here is actually not a photo. It is a clip from a reel that I did, and we all did them, and it was a lot of fun. We started off in a previous location, and then we swapped the camera around, and magically, the creative design team girls all appeared in back of us, and we did them in different location. This was on top of our ferry ride, and it was very windy and very cold, but even though the photo is not perfect, the memory of it is definitely pretty awesome. So here I have my photos. You can see that I've changed the orientation, and we're going to have to talk about, remember when I said on the first layout, my photos were floating? Well, definitely when I've changed the orientation, the photos are definitely floating on this foundation page. So for that, I'm going to bring in another pattern paper. Another thing that I've embraced over the years is it's okay to mix and match your patterns. Although these ones here kind of came as a companion set, you've got the more brown tones and the black and white. I'm going to introduce one more pattern, which is from the Nature's Sweetness, and I'm going to run this at the bottom, clear across the bottom. And it's going to create that little supporting shelf. So let's take a look at these 2 pieces. I'm going to have one that's going to run here. And then I'll be able to add this photo. So I'm kind of lining up the photos here at the top and leaving equal distance in the center. And then just to give you a visual, I'm just going to add this here. But it's probably not going to run the full length. Let's sneak that over. You can see that by simply adding one piece of pattern paper to anchor all of my photos, things are starting to make a little bit more sense on this layout. Before I move on to the next step, I want to talk about my title because yes, as you can see, I'm still using my Cricut to create my titles, but since then, we can do these really cool offsets. The title was cut out of black. I did an offset in white, but when I brought my title on this busy print, it kind of got lost. So I cut into this piece right here on the vertical to give that kind of strié look on the background, and now it pops off the page. We are probably going to add a little bit more flair to this title, but for now it's standing out quite nicely. The last thing I want to touch on this foundation page is there was a transition strip on the original layout, and I cut into this one and I thought, oh, that'll look nice, but because the frame on the outside, let me move everything out of the way so that you can kind of see that. You've got your frame here that's 1/4 inch in black, and then you have this frame here. It was kind of like, nah, not really feeling that. I did want to introduce some colors based on these photos, and you would think that I would have picked red. And you know what? I purposely shied away from the red because I wanted to really pick out the colors that highlight the girls, the blue in the sky, to remind myself how cold it was that morning. And here the calmness of the blue really pops on these patterns that we have. These are pretty neutral patterns, and when you add your photos are instantly the star. So that is a good thing for you to take away. So what's a layout without a little bit of bling? This is the Pastel Ombre Glimmer paper, and I really like this one. Do you see how it starts in a light blue and it goes into a teal? That was perfect to pick up on all of the blues here. So I'm going to do the light blue at the top, and I'm going to run that clear on top of both of those pieces. And this is where you see the big difference. I'm going to hide that black one And look at that. Isn't that pretty? It instantly brings a little bit of life to this page without kind of competing with everything that's going on. I'm really happy with how the foundation page is shaping up. I've got my really pretty pattern paper. I have my little add-on here from another collection that really helps to anchor my photos. My photos have been changed, the orientation has been changed, and we added a pop of color from the photos. So when you are working with this collection, whatever color you are trying to pull from, that's going to be the fun part because these are so neutral. The title is really nice, but I think I can make it pop a little bit more. But before I get ahead of myself, let's see how we can redistribute the clusters around this page. Now, one thing that I've learned again over the years is that instead of just kind of sporadically putting them here and there, creating a visual triangle really does help unite your pages. So for that reason, I'm going to start with circles, and you'll see why in a moment. So I'm going to start with these white circles, and we're going to do a little treatment. I'm going to add one right here. I'm going to add one right here. By staggering my photos, I now have a natural landing spot for a little cluster. So we're going to have one here. And then to complement and to finish that triangle, we're going to add one down here. Now these ones here I might have to change how they look. I might bring this one up here, but we're going to fine tune that when we do the assembly. Now I did feel that these were a little bit too white, so we're going to go through some quick techniques today where I brought in some ink colors again to highlight my photos. These are the colors I'll be using today. I've brought in some petal pink, some flirty flamingo. I'm picking up on the shirts here from two of the girls. The petal pink picks up on the skin tones, so I think that that's really nice. The balmy blue definitely picks up on all of my photos, and this is what I did here, and we'll do that together in a moment, and you'll see how it really brings this layout to life. I've got a couple of green colors here, and that's because if you know me, I definitely had to add flowers to this layout. For my clusters and my embellishments, I will be bringing in, this was the last die set from Close to My Heart when we transitioned over to Stampin' Up. And Jema just used it recently, and it kind of made me think, you know what? I love this die set. So I'm going to bring it in and see how it can work on this page. We were at a garden, so why not, right? I did use white cardstock and I did some ink blending, and I'm going to show you how I created all of those, but let's just take a peek and see how that's going to translate on the page. Do you see how that blue and that pink is really soft? I was going for a soft look. I did go ahead and I die cut a whole bunch of pieces, and I'm going to show you again how I achieve this look. Everything was cut out of white, and I love that just by inking some pieces, you can change it up and be something completely different. So here I started light, and then at the base I went dark. So we're going to add two here, and we're probably going to add another one. Let me see if I can move this one down here and move this one here. I like it. I really like how soft that is. So we're going to have a cluster of flowers here. We're going to have another one up here and one on this side. So let me adhere some of these pieces down because they're moving around a lot. And we're going to go through how I created this look for the circle and how I was able to color in these flowers to match my layout. All of my pieces have been adhered down, and I really love how the foundation page is turning out. So now it's going to be the fun part where we are going to embellish and create clusters. Now you can also see that by strategically placing my clusters in 3 specific areas, your eye naturally flows across the page. And when I started with these in white, I felt that they laid a little flat, and I think you'll agree. So we're going to do this cute treatment here. Let me just take this one out. Do you see how instantly you get a nice pop of color? It complements the photos and it is not too bright. So we're going to go ahead and do that on a smaller one here. Let me show you this on this side. So again, it grounds the color and the layout. I was able to move this one here on top of the shelf if you want, and this one at the bottom. So it does create a nice visual flow. I'm going to get busy and die cut a few more of these awesome dies from this set here. And again, they're all cut in white. We're going to add beautiful colors to them with a little bit of ink. And we're going to do some ink smooshing and splatters, of course, to bring it all together. Let me get busy. I will go ahead and die cut and we will do the treatment together. You'll see it's really, really easy. We're going to zoom right in for this part of the process. And I've gone ahead, as you can see, and I've die cut and colored some of these to just speed things along. One takeaway is for these ones in particular, so these ones here, you've got the stem and you have the flowers. I would recommend keeping them intact because they are all different. They actually fit on the branch, but they are all different. So either you cut one at a time or you just be mindful of that. These ones here in particular, they're a little finicky to put together, but that's what happens when you get a lot of details. So I just wanted to point that out. We're going to put this little guy back in here. Before we get to the inking of the flowers, let's do the circles because those take a little bit longer to dry. I have my 3 circles here, and this is the largest one with that nice little detail, and then the one down. So I have 3 circles, and I'm going to bring in Palmy Blue. Now, this is super easy. We're just going to do some ink smooshing and some splatters, and we're going to set them to the side to dry. So I'm going to go in with my color, and you don't need a lot. I'm just going to put some here on my mat. And we're going to add a little bit of water. Spray some water and you can really see the color when you do that. And then I'm just going to drag this circle into it. Or I'm going to, kind of put it into, this is not watercolor cardstock. It's just regular cardstock. So it is quite thirsty. And you can see that it's leaving some little marks here and there because whatever you have on your mat, that's what you're going to have on your cardstock. So I'm just going to pick all of that up and I'm going to set that here to the side, and we're going to do that again. Let me move that over actually. So we're going to add more ink, and now that I saw that it does leave some little kind of corner marks if you want, I'm going to add quite a bit of water. Again, this is just regular cardstock, and I'm going to go right in here and pick up that color, and I prefer that. So I'm going to stop here. There's always that chance that you overdo it, so I'm going to stop here, and I like this one. Actually, I like them both. They're not going to be the same and they are not going to be perfect. That is not the aim for this technique. So let's see if I can pick up the rest for this little guy here. I sure can. And again, when you are using regular cardstock, it just soaks it all up. It pretty much picks up all of the water, and the cardstock is really, really wet at this point. I am going to finish off this look with a little bit of splatters. We're going to bring back our ink pad and we're going to squeeze on the lid to get some inside the lid. So let's open that up so you have a nice kind of pool of color, and we are going to add some splatters. I'm going to add 1 pump. I don't want to have too much water because I want these to stand out. Just using a regular painter's brush. This is a number 0. And I'm going to go in here and I am going to add my splatter. Now, it's going to fade back, but I wanted them to be a little bit darker. So that's why I just did the 1 pump of water in here. So you can see that that looks really, really pretty. Now you're going to have to set these to the side and let them dry and let them flatten out. Remember, this is not watercolor paper. If you have watercolor paper, you can certainly use that. But what I like to do at this point is I like to take a big block and I like to kind of put it on top and let it dry. This is where I usually take a break and have lunch and come back and finish the assembly. All right, let's start adding colors to these petals. You probably can't see these on my white mat, but once I start adding colors, you definitely will. For my peonies, I chose Petal Pink, and I'm going to use a blending brush. Now, this is something I didn't have back in 2020, and I really do like them. Now, this die cut is really intricate, and there's lots and lots of details. So that's why I wanted to bring in some ink, because it's really going to show off. Let me just put this down. It's really going to show off all of these great details in the petals, and I just thought it gave it a really soft look. Let's add some colors to these beautiful petals right here. I am using Petal Pink, and I have a sticky mat on my surface. This is from the Stamp Wheel. It is the Ultra Sticky Mat, and you can actually purchase this as a standalone item. And I found that when I'm doing flowers or intricate pieces, they stick down nicely and I don't get that inky. I still do, but it makes it a little bit easier. Now I am going to start in the center and I'm going to kind of radiate out. I want the edges to be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go in here. I've got a scratch piece of cardstock. It's the same cardstock, so it's going to be the same color. So let's see here. I'm going to go straight up in the center, and you see I don't have to hold it. I kind of like that so that I don't have my fingers in the way when I'm trying to show you. And I'm going to pounce again and get more ink. Now I don't mind if I have that little pounce mark in the center, because remember, this is a layering piece. Now the reason why I'm going slowly is because I really want to highlight all of the details. So I'm going back in the center and I'm just radiating out. Now this piece goes right here. So what I want to do with this piece, I want to add a lot of color at the bottom, fading into almost white. That's what makes sense to me. So we're going to flip this over to make it easy on myself, and I'm going to come in from the bottom and add quite a bit of ink if you want. So do you see how this is really going to create an illusion of separation just by making it a little bit darker? Now this piece opens up to receive this one, so I think that I want to make that darker. And I'm just going to fade out to nothing. I want a little bit of a color, but not a lot. Now these will definitely dry back, so let's put that here on top. Do you see instantly you have that really pretty color? I can probably add a little bit more here. So there's probably a little bit more involved when you are doing the ink blending, but I feel that it's totally worth it. So ink blending is definitely a layering step, and you can layer it up nice and light, which is sometimes hard for me. And you can always add more, but you cannot take away. So let's see how that looks. Oh yes, do you see how instantly this flower is coming to life? So I'm happy with that. The little bud in the center, I'm going to try and keep it as light as possible. So we're going to go from the bottom. And I'm going to stop right here. This is where this little piece comes in. And do you see? this is my flower now. It has dimension and it looks really pretty. I think I want to add maybe a little bit more. You know what? I'm going to stop here. This is always the hard part, when to stop, and let it dry back. Again, have lunch maybe and come back, but see how soft that is? I really, really like the way that this looks. So let's talk about these leaves and how this look was achieved. So this was achieved using the old olive ink. And again, I started at the bottom with a little bit darker. You can see that I left some highlights on various of the leaves, so on various sides, I should say. So here we have this one that's lighter. Here we have this one that is lighter. For the bud, so this one is this piece. I figured that closest to the little bud itself, so once we start adhering these together, it would be a little bit darker, and then I went lighter. This one here was actually done using Mossy Meadow and these little branches too. For these little buds here, I wanted to bring in a little bit more color or something a little bit more vibrant. So for that, I used Flirty Flamingo, and I think that it's got that really nice contrast from the petal pink. The larger flowers were done with a combination of the Mossy Meadow and the olive. So let's do that quickly together, and you'll see this is really easy. I'm going to move these out of the way because this is when I usually get ink all over the place. So let me just quickly move these out of the way for you, and we'll do one together. So I've got this one that is in white and this one that is already colored. We're going to start with Old Olive, and I'm just going to go very, you know what, I'm going to start in the center so that I don't have too much ink. And that is nice and soft, so I'm more confident now that I can press a little bit harder. This is the Old Olive right at the top. And then I'm going to bring in, and I'm going to switch up my blending brush only because I do want to have a definition. For my blending brushes, I usually have two, one that is lighter and one that is darker, and for whatever reason I've inverted these two, but I do know that this is Mossy Meadow. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to flip that to the side, it's just easier for me to show you. Let's bring this in the center, and we're just going to go and add the color, and these colors will blend beautifully. This is entirely up to you, how dark you want to make these leaves. I kind of like this one. It's got a little bit more highlights. This one is a little bit brighter, but again, it will dry back. So don't be afraid to add a lot of ink or wait for the ink to dry back to see the true color. Okay, my flowers, or the big one anyways, is nice and dry. So if you know me, you know that I love to shape flowers. And often I'm asked, well, are they not going to flatten out? They most definitely will, but they will also remember the shape you gave them. And we're going to add a little bit of dimension in between the petals, so that will help as well. You don't want them to be too bulky because then it just creates a lot of bulk in your album. So here I am going to take, this is actually a fondant shaping tool, and I got it off of Amazon. It was very inexpensive and it fits the bill. So I am going to, so you definitely need a mat, and I've recently gravitated to this one here from Stampin' Up. It is perfect for this. So I am just rubbing this tool on the edges, and I am not holding it. Now you're probably saying, well, why aren't you holding it? I'm not holding it because you can actually rip this apart. This is just cardstock, right? We're going to flip that over, and then I'm going to gently kind of draw a circle in the middle of this, and these are going to pop. Do you see how they're now popping a little bit? They're curling, definitely curling. You can definitely curl them more at this point. I'm going back and forth. I'm following the lines in the die cut. So I'm just adding even more dimension. And I do find that this curling part does stay pretty much, it keeps its shape. And we're going to flatten out the center to make those lift. And we're going to do the same thing with this one. So this actually comes out. So what I want to do here is I want to push this in so that it naturally separates from the bottom. I'm going to go back and forth, following the lines of the die. I've got this here. I'm going to turn it over and flatten it out. You can absolutely skip this step, but I think that I really like this step. Do you see how fluffy it looks like now? So for this one here, I'm just going to round out or curl back the top. Again, following the lines that are already in here. And then this one is going to tuck in. And it just gives it that extra dimension. So when we adhere these downs, now if you don't have these, you can definitely use dimensionals. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start layering up and giving this flower dimension, not too much. We don't want to create excessive bulk. So we're going to tuck this one in. And I'm pushing that together, and then this one is going to sit right here. If you've noticed, I've kept this image here to refer back to because it gives you a really good indication on how to place these. So I'm going to add some dimensionals again, and you can add, so I'm going to place this here. You can add just liquid glue at the bottom. So I'm going to add a tiny little bit of glue at the bottom so that it lays flat. So we are going to remove the backing off of these. And you get a good kind of idea on how these are built. So I am putting this right here at the bottom. And there you have it. Isn't that pretty? I hope you can see it. It's so, so pretty. And then when you add, here they have one, and I definitely think I want two. So you can see where my dark is and my light. And we are going to build that flower. And I think that that looks super, super pretty. I'm going to get busy. I'm going to assemble all of them. And then we're going to bring them on the layout and we can, you know, really look at how to finish it all off. If you have any takeaway from this video today, scrapbooking is definitely a journey. And our styles evolve over time. I think they should. And I'm happy with where my style is going. And it wasn't there at the beginning. It was more about making layouts and trying to get them done. I think that I've now learned to embrace the process. A lot of people always ask me, well, how long did it take you to do that? Does it matter if you're having fun? So that is one of my biggest takeaway from this journey that I've been on. And I hope that you can, you know, just embrace. This is creative time. This is where you enjoy doing something. And sometimes it's not all about just getting it done. It's about taking the time for yourself to reflect and have time. And if that means putting little flowers together, so be it. So let me put all of these flowers together and I'll bring back the layouts and we are going to start working on those beautiful clusters. All right, I've had a nice little break. I went for lunch, I grabbed myself a tea, and I think it's time to finish this layout. Now I did adhere down my circles here only because they're a little wonky. This is just regular cardstock and they are not laying flat. So just to make it easier on myself when I start building my clusters, you'll get a better visual for sure. And we're gonna talk about this title. Remember I said I wanted to add a little bit more to it, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna add another little cluster of flowers, but then that was defeating the purpose of creating a movement and a visual triangle with the ones I had already done. I'm going to move these out of the way and we're going to start building this cluster. Now I have the biggest of the leaves, and it's okay if it overlaps on the photo. I actually kind of like that. We're going to add our 2 leaves at the bottom. So we're going to add one right here. There's a natural spot for it. And then we're going to add another one. I just feel that it needed 2, not just 1. And we're going to add our little berries or whatever you want to call these ones. And I think I'm going to add another one here. When I started with my title, it was all in a straight line, and that's fine. But when I did this cluster, I thought, well, what if I scooch this over lower and this a little bit higher? Right away you have a little bit more interest, and it also gives me a little bit more room for my cluster. I'm going to adhere these down off camera because I'm going to have my head in the shot, but basically I'm going to add some foam tape underneath the flower, and then these are just going to tuck underneath. If we move over to this circle, this is a little tricky because you kind of see it in between the 2 photos. So you just have to remember that when you add your little buds. And I think this is it. I could add a whole bunch more. I like that I have a main focal flower and it's really pretty. This one here is kind of like a companion, if you want, with the companion photos. And then we're going to bring in the 3rd one. And this one here, I'm going to add the little leaves again, just to kind of fill out my circle. I'm going to do the same thing with the leaves. I'm going to tuck them underneath. Do you see how that instantly brings this flower to life? I'm going to add a little stack here and this one up here, or maybe down here. I really love the way these flowers turned out, and I'm glad I took the time to do the ink blending. I like the softness of them, and I like that even though they're pretty big and substantial, they're not taken away from the photo. So I'm going to add my title, and then I thought, you know what? Let's add some ink blending. Ink blending is something that goes on the background, so I don't think it's going to distract from what I already have. So let me add some color. Just want to make sure that I'm not going in too dark. We're going to start here. I can tell you that I like this. It's coming off this strip. It looks really, really good. So I'm glad that I took some time to let this title kind of come together. And then this one here, the color can come from the outer edge. Let's take a look at that. It's just a soft little touch, and it just kind of supports that title a bit more. I think a little bit up here in the corner will look good. So this is where you just have to kind of go with your gut and see if adding color or not is something you would like. But it really does kind of complement and finishes this layout. Now this is definitely something I wouldn't have done back in 2020 because I didn't have these brushes. Remember at the beginning when I said that black and white can be hard to play with, but also you can make it into anything you want. And had you told me at the beginning that I would be adding some blue to this page where it was black and white, I don't think I would have believed you, but here we are. Let me adhere down my clusters and my title, and then we'll take a look at the completed layout together. Let's take a look at the completed layout. I am so happy on how it turned out. And you know what? Don't be afraid to rework an old project or take an older layout and apply what you have learned since you first scrapbook. Growth comes from experience, learning new technique, and stepping out of your comfort zone. Now, I have to admit, I did not step out of my comfort zone. If anything, I stepped right into it. But one thing I am doing now is I am taking the time to document the photos and the story. Let's take a look at 2020. This layout is still really good, but the fact that I have no photos on here is definitely not a completed project. And also back then I was more concerned with getting my pages done and the randomness of my clusters here. I can live with this layout absolutely, but I'm really glad that I've owned my skill and I can create something that's a little bit more balanced. And you can see here that this looks really balanced. Let's take a closer look at these gorgeous flowers, and I hope that you agree that it definitely is worth taking the time to ink some of these beauties. I love the way that this layout turned out. Thank you again for spending some of your time with me. I really do appreciate it, and I love the conversations we have in the comments of these videos. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget this is a video collaboration with the Creative Design Team girls and my special YouTuber friends. I think you're going to enjoy their twist on some of my older projects. I know I can't wait to take a look at all of their beautiful artwork. All of their projects will be listed in this playlist right here on the left-hand side.